Thank you.
Great.
A belated Happy New Year to everyone.
Yes, Happy New Year.
Thank you. Wish you the same.
Absolutely.
Sorry. Nice.
Fantastic. Okay. 1 minute to go.
Ram, just move your camera a bit down so that we can remove the headspace there. Okay. One more.
That's fine. Yeah.
More, please. No, down,
No,
down.
no. Other way.
There you go.
Okay. Is it fine?
All right.
Yeah. Apologies. One travel and found a place where it's a
Okay, fantastic.
Hi everyone, we're live.
Okay, welcome everybody to our session here in the Asia time zone. We're looking this morning with our panel at the outlook for South Asia to bolster its energy resilience in 2026. Of course, we have a situation where already we have energy demand growing faster than reliable supply, and by some forecasts over the coming decades, that's going to double that world average in terms of energy demand. Vibhuti Garg, Director South Asia for IEEFA, welcome to the panel. Let me start with you and just ask you, sort of an overarching question is, can South Asia, and that's a very big bucket obviously of countries, but can they break this sort of structural challenge, if you like? And what would be, in your opinion, step one? What would be, many things obviously will have to be done, but step one, which is staring those countries in the face as a solution to break that cycle?
Yeah, hi. Good to be here today. So I think it's a very pertinent question, how with the South Asian economies, we are seeing increasing demand, but at the same time, the supply is growing. And specifically, if I can maybe just reflect on India's experience in particular, we have seen energy demand growth, which has not been linear. In 2025, for instance, India saw relatively muted peak demand growth due to prolonged monsoon conditions that reduce cooling requirements. But overall, if you will look at year-on-year demand growth, it's still very high because of driven by economic activity, urbanization, and electrification. Now, meeting this rising demand, sustainably remains a central challenge. So it's not just how do we meet this supply, but also how do we meet this supply sustainably is the most important question now. So if you look on the supply side, again, drawing on India's experience, performance has been remarkable in the last 1 year. From Jan to November 2025, India added about 44.5 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity, which is one of the highest annual additions ever, underscoring its ability to scale reliable clean supply to meet incremental demand. But with this, it comes with challenges, because so far when India was adding say about 10 to 12 gigawatt of renewable energy, I think renewable energy integration was not such a big issue. But increasingly, with such huge capacity coming into the system, what the country needs is also to deploy more and more storage, whether it's in the form of battery energy storage or pumped hydro. And I think that's where the role of South Asia becomes very, very critical, because the countries in South Asia have very, very complementary resources. We have Nepal, Bhutan having huge hydro resources, and they can really build in more pumped hydro and help India meet its peak demand. And during months where their hydro is not available, they do look at imports from India. So there is a lot of complementarity in terms of resources, in terms of demand as well, which the region needs to exercise and really, again, as I said, build more interconnections, promote more market where there is more transparent way of settling of trade, because so
Okay.
far it has been more and more from government to government kind of contracts. But I think for more transparency and more visibility of even allowing more and more private players to come in and do that kind of a trade, we really need more open market mechanisms and price discovery happening in the real-time market.
Okay, great. Thank you, Vibhuti. Ram Narayanan, Senior Industry Leader and Global Energy and Materials Strategist. Let me go to you with that point that Vibhuti brought out, which is, regional energy integration. I mean, there's the sort of low-lying fruit of that, how countries could help each other in strengthening sort of their resilience against the challenges that they're having. Shared storage, etc. Obviously combined electricity grids. But let's be real about this now. From a regulatory point of view, looking at India and other neighboring countries, what are the constraints there today? Are those countries open already? Is it an economic problem, or is it a politically regulatory issue that we're not seeing these solutions already, start to be put in place?
Yeah. Oh, hi, Dyala. Good to be here. Okay, let me just paint a bit of a macro context here. I think, see, this entire South Asia is about 25% of world population, 10% of global energy demand, and growing at a higher rate, more than what the world is seeing. I think the energy demand is bound to be growing. And then one of the major factor across all these countries, it's all dependent upon imported fossil fuels, like whether it be oil or energy, except with the exception of Nepal, which produces quite a lot of hydropower. And we've seen some issues with that, especially the geopolitical shock that we saw over the last so many years. Well, talking specifically about regional integration, well, there's been some amount of regional integration. Like if you look at India, Bhutan, Nepal, and Bangladesh, there has been an integration that has gone on, like where power from Nepal actually has been transferred to Bangladesh also. And also, secondly, even from an integration perspective, well, Indian power producer set up a plant in India to supply power to Bangladesh. Of course, that's a little bit of political issues. But the prospects are pretty high. Like, since it's between India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, it's a landlocked place. I mean, the cases for regional integration is very, very high. But as you rightly touched upon, rather than regulatory, more of a political issue. Look at it this way: 25% of global population, but the percentage of global trade is very, very less. It's got to do with the political system that happens out here. It's too politically volatile, and the political dimensions between all these countries, everybody's aware of what is happening over here, is very, very high. So that is a sort of an impediment for a regional integration, despite the fact that, the benefits of regional integration will be very, very high, given the fact that energy dependency, population, and all. And lastly, but not the least, one of the other major issues is, like, from a political perspective, the global superpowers like China and USA are very, very active in this particular area. So therefore, everybody's aware of that. So if you put all this together, yes, the case for regional integration is very, very high. There's been a few success stories as well. But I think it's more to do with the political integration, which unfortunately is not happening. And if you want me to take a bet, at least for the next few years, I don't see it happening on a larger scale. So that's where we are right now.
Okay, Osama Rizvi, Global Market and Product Strategist at Primary Vision. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. This is obviously a capacity issue that has to be built up. But, and let's look at Pakistan as an example. It's not in the same position as India, for example. It's not advanced on its renewables agenda for very, very obvious economic reasons, size, etc. But, and Pakistan also is at the receiving end a lot of financial aid from the IMF. So let's look at the numbers now and investment priorities. I mean, does a country like Pakistan have the privilege, if you like, to even consider resolving these issues, or what in its order of sort of priority is energy supply the number one problem for a country like Pakistan or others? But surely it has to shield itself for that from and what would be, again, the number one solution that you would think a country like Pakistan needs to pursue on that front?
Thank you so much for having me today, and very interesting discussion, and even a very interesting question. First of all, in Pakistan, this might come as a surprise to everyone. The issue is not of capacity. Interestingly, Pakistan has more capacity, installed capacity, and electricity generation capacity than we are actually using. The issue is, on the contrary, that the industrial demand and the domestic demand, because of what you said, because of the economic issues and cost of living crisis, it has gone down. So there is a mismatch between demand and supply. Right. Secondly, in terms of, us having the privilege or that policy space or the policy room to implement certain policies that are pro-poor policies that do not, necessarily meet every criteria of IMF or other donors. I think yes. We are actually we are seeing some positive side of the IMF as well in Pakistan. They have recently become very active in terms of um, uprooting corruption from the country. They did a report about it. They are trying to, introduce conditionalities, which I have written about, criticizing them. But in this case, these certain conditionalities have also made it mandatory for certain SOEs to work more efficiently, to be more productive, to be overhauled in a certain manner. So that I think will prove beneficial for Pakistan. And to say that what is the priority right now and what should be the priority, I think um, my personal opinion and also that of the government, it seems, at least for now, is to resolve the energy issue. One thing that they are not getting right, and I always am trying to highlight that renewables and everything is okay, but for Pakistan, for a country like Pakistan, to wean themselves off fossil fuels, even, we need first a very good oil and gas base. I have highlighted this many a times in my appearances here at Gulf Intelligence as well, that in the next 4 to 5 years, our oil reserves are about to drain, and 9 to 10 years, the gas reserves will
Yeah.
deplete. So, and it creates the issue of funding, right? Until unless our own house is in order, specifically in terms of having enough access to money, we won't be able to make policies that resolve the energy issue. And energy is the issue, even when we talk about India or Pakistan, any other country in the world, because there is no energy, there is no industrial activity, there is no domestic demand, and so on and so forth. So that is where we stand right now.
Okay.
Overall, I think it's not the issue of capacity for Pakistan. It is a mismatch between demand and supply, and also and I think we will dig deeper into that.
Structural
Yeah,
solutions
structural
need to
issues.
come in.
Yes, yes, yes.
Vibhuti, I mean, let's talk a bit about sort of the geopolitical. Let's talk a little bit, put the geopolitical question into this, because again, India is in an advantageous position. It has many suppliers. It's taking Russian oil. It's taking Middle Eastern oil. It's always said we're open for business with anyone. It all depends on price. I mean, are the sort of increasing geopolitical risks and chess game that we're seeing played out in front of us in the Western Hemisphere becoming a concern for a country like India in terms of the choices it may have and its push towards more self-sufficiency with renewables, for example? Do you think that's going to be speeded up now, even more so than before, because of the vulnerability that it could see itself under because of geopolitics?
Absolutely. I think you're bang on in terms of how India is approaching this whole issue of energy transition, but also very very ensuring that its energy security is not jeopardized. Because while India has been a huge importer of oil and gas, and also if we see, the price volatility that we have seen in these markets, India is a very price sensitive consumer.
Yeah.
So definitely the economics always play out, who the trading partners will be. And in the last few years, because of the price sensitivity or the premiums that were being offered, India has been often changing its import trading country. So that definitely drives a lot of decision. But at the same time, there is a huge push on domestic manufacturing of renewables, the supply chain, so that the country becomes more and more energy secure. And those all the energy technologies that form the future of meeting India's growing energy demand are homegrown. But at the same time, I want to add that caveat: even if India is pushing for big renewable deployment, and we are seeing that happening, but somewhere in the supply chain, there'll always be some level of dependency. Say, for example, for renewable energy supply chains, India does not have all the minerals, the rare earth minerals or the critical minerals that are needed for battery storage or for module. So somewhere in the value chain, there will be some level of dependency. And I think India is increasingly now looking at diversifying its imports from different countries, even for minerals, not just oil and gas. So that's the kind of approach we are seeing from India's perspective. And there's huge level of public support in the sense of government putting up huge capital expenditure through different initiatives like production-linked incentive schemes to help the Indian manufacturers grow their base. So scalability is what we are seeing. And also we need support from multinationals by, in the form of blended finance mechanism, because again, finance, while it is available, but what countries in South Asia needs is low-cost capital. So I think that becomes fundamental in the way the energy choices will be shaping up in the coming years.
Okay, I mean, Ram, one of the energy choices of oil that India's increased in the last year or two is Russian, taking in a lot of Russian oil. I mean, the headline price already is very favorable for India. We're looking at $60 oil, WTI, Brent, etc. A far cry from the $80 we saw only a couple of years ago. So India's in a good position today, and the forecast is that that price isn't going to shift too much. And of course, it's been getting discounted oil also from Russia. I believe it imported about 1.5 million barrels a day last year. That we saw a few changes in that during the year because of sanctions policy from Europe and from the US. Do you see that continuing into the year ahead? Does India need to continue importing as much Russian oil with these with the top sort of line price becoming more favorable as well?
Yeah, Dal, I think you hit about the right spot that the prices are very favorable for a country like India. At $60 or so, I mean, India's got a wide choice of suppliers whom they can choose from. Like in the last 1 month, we've seen a dip in Russian oil imports mainly because of all the geopolitics that's gone on thanks to the US government. So therefore, India is in a sweet spot. And then it's got a wide variety of sources to choose from. And if Venezuelan oil also comes to the market, so I mean, it's the case gets better. But we're looking on a broader scale right now. That's what Vibhuti alluded to right now. So India is also focusing heavily on renewables, focusing on the complete supply chain of renewables. So looking at that, when the renewable energy production also moves up, and there's a wide choice of oil producers to supply from, especially given the increased oil supply from OPEC countries also. So therefore, I think India's in a sort of sweet spot. So I think, let's say maybe 10 years back, the Indian government is worried about the fiscal deficit because of oil prices, which they shouldn't be worried about it so much right now. And one of the good things that has happened is thanks to all the low oil prices, and then the all the pump prices are controlled in India. The Indian government has been able to clean up all the balance sheets of all the oil marketing companies. So therefore, you put all this together, you can put all these facts together. Yes, India's in a sort of sweet spot right now, and I think it can pick and choose. But on the second point, also to do with the Russian oil, is India will continue its strategic relationship with Russia, because Russia is not only with the oil, but it's also a defense supplies, and also given the dynamics with China, in which Russia can play a good counterbalancing act. So putting all this together, yes, India will continue its relationship with Russia. Maybe the numbers might go here and there for some time. But if you look at the complete basket of geopolitics plus energy supply put together, I think India will continue its strategy of picking up suppliers, continue strategic relationships, and then managing the geopolitical issues also.
Okay,
So,
I mean,
yeah, you're right. I agree with you.
Osama, I mean, Pakistan is not in such an advantageous position geopolitically, is it? It's kind of got its hands tied much more because of the size of its economy, because of its dependency, obviously, on imported fuel and less choice, and of course, the financial situation you referred to in your earlier comments. Again, is geopolitical energy security becoming a concern for Pakistan, or do you still feel you have plenty of choice? You will not be compromised on that front?
No, in a way, it has always been a concern, specifically when it comes to pricing. Like India, we're also an energy, import-dependent country. So, if X or Y, decides to fight or hit each other's refineries, we don't have much of a say in where the prices would go, and so. The people here would be paying the higher electricity bills and higher prices at the pump. For now, as you discussed with Ram, the prices have been favorable and it has helped Pakistan as well. We received a New Year's gift wherein the petrol prices went down by 9 or 10 rupees at the pump. So that is good. But that remains an issue in terms of policy, and it is a vulnerability. And that is why in my previous comment, I said that we need increased domestic oil and gas production. However, on the other end, speaking about Russia or the choices you mentioned, Pakistan once again is trying to forge an energy alliance with Russia. I don't know whether it is going to go well or whether it will be materialized in to the tune that the government wants. But still, we are seeing, at least in the world of energy, we are seeing trappings of a new world order. Whether we look at the energy flows, whether we look at how countries are behaving in buying and purchasing things. So I think, and at the same time, we are seeing a lot of options available. Guyana, Argentina, Russia, and I'm not saying Venezuela because that's a different, totally different crude type. Not very, Pakistani refineries
Right.
won't be able to process that. But we are seeing a lot of options, and I think down the road, as the population increase, Pakistan is destined to become, I think, third or fourth most populous country in the world. Energy demand has to increase, and we will have to diversify our options in terms of suppliers. And at some point, I'm also thinking that maybe we can take Russian oil from China. Maybe we can take Russian oil from Turkey. Both of these countries, one of the top three buyers of Russian oil, and both of these whom with we enjoy very good diplomatic relations as well. So maybe we can do a detour, but we will have to do something in order to survive economically in a much better way, and to
Yeah.
keep things under control.
Okay, Vibhuti, I mean, just looking at this first survey question there, again, we've touched on some of those points. I mean, I'd like to get your opinion. I mean, reducing imported fuels. I mean, obviously, a country like India is expanding its renewables capacity, as you've touched on. Building grid capacity. I mean, for example, if we look just at China as a country that has been expanding renewables capacity in a very impressive way, but the usage of that internally, domestically, is because it's, the grid capacity is still trying to catch up. Is that as much of a problem for India today, if you like? And that, just looking at that particular point, that seems to be a general challenge across the board in terms of deploying all that investment that's going into renewables.
Yes, some of the capacity is not being able to dispatch because of lack of availability of grid. Because you have to understand, the grid takes like 3 to 4 or 5 years to be developed, whereas renewable energy projects can become online in a short span of time, 12 to 18 months. So I think there is a gap there, and that is why there is a need to start planning from where the renewable energy potential is, where the capacity is going to come up, because the demand and the supply is not happening at the same level. So I think that's where the strengthening of grid, and more importantly, not just setting up of grid, but also making it much more smarter, because we have to recognize that renewable energy is intermittent in nature, is variable in nature. So we really need smart grids where, consumers or prosumers can really inject excess supplies. A consumer can inject excess supply. So there is more real-time balancing happening in the grids, because system stability is also at the center of, integrating more and more renewable energy. So grid expansion, grid strengthening, but more importantly, also making it much more smart, so that both there are demand signals as well. So on the other hand, I would also say that storage will also play a critical role in helping to absorb the excess supply when demand is not there and use it during peak hours. So storage and grid strengthening will be very, very critical.
Yeah. I mean, that the world is still grappling with battery storage efficiency, isn't it? Ram, let's just discuss a bit the refining sort of outlook for South Asia in general. You can focus on India or give us your perspective on one or two of the other countries. But again, I mean, you've got the refining capacity as well to consider, whether it's for domestic consumption or re-export opportunities. Do you expect more integration there? We see countries like China now switching, really focusing on their petchem angle of that. Give us your perspective for South Asia and India.
Okay, I think China, you're right in saying they focus more on petchem, but if you look at the dynamics of China refineries right now, and if you look at the export quotas that's come out in the last 15 days, the export quotas have remained the same. So therefore, Chinese refining companies also focusing on fuels a lot, especially given the fact that the cracks have been pretty strong. Now coming to India, yes, India is seeing an expansion in refining capacities, mainly driven by still the increasing fuel consumption in India. While India is still a diesel dependent country, and unlike China, still diesel is the main hub for transportation and for industry. And then gasoline also, the demand is pretty strong. And third thing, Indians are traveling a lot. So therefore, the aviation fuel demand is also pretty strong. So that is reflecting a good crack for fuels in India. Petchem demand is also increasing, so therefore there's an increasing tendency to make more chemicals from the refineries in India. From about 20%, the people are targeting to go around 30-35%. But the important aspect has been the exports of fuels to other countries, especially to Europe. I mean, that has been a big business, but recently with some US sanctions, it has come down a bit. But that's also pretty lucrative business, given the fact that we don't know when the Russian oil and Russian gas are actually going to flow through to Europe. So therefore, putting all this together, India is seeing a refinery expansion. Predominantly, the state-owned companies are investing in the refineries out there. So therefore, putting all this together, refining capacity is expanding, driven by both the fuel demand as well as the petchem demand. I wouldn't know much about what is happening in the other countries. But yes, in Sri Lanka, especially, if you can hazard a guess, given the fact that depend completely upon fuels imports, there also refinery is expanding. So putting all this together, given the fact that there is a fuel demand as well as a petchem demand, so therefore refineries will be expanding in Southeast Asia at least for the next 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, thanks. Let's go to Osama with that. I mean, give us your sort of updates, Osama, on the refining picture. Again, do a lot of those facilities need upgrading? Again, is it a sort of a funding, finance issue? Is the country opening up a bit more to private investment on that front? Could that be the solution?
Yes, for Pakistan at least, I think having our own refineries or expanding the refining capacity is an economic necessity. According to a recent report, very interesting, that if Pakistan has more refineries and if we're able to refine our own oil, increase production as well, it can alone save us around $10.8 billion every year. This is a huge amount. We went to IMF for $7 billion. That is $3 billion more plus on that. Secondly, 5 big refineries here. I don't know the technical categorization of it, but what the types of refinery we have, they don't produce the high-speed diesel that we actually need, but furnace oil, but we need, I think those are called hydrocracking refineries, where the HSD can be produced more, because that is what is the main thing that we need, especially for the transport sector, which is a huge sector here, like in any other country. So also under the initiative SIFC, Special Investment Facilitation Council, if I've gotten the full form correctly, so Saudi Arab has also promised to build a $10 billion refinery in Pakistan. Progress is there. I won't say that it has stalled, but I think this is going to happen as well. So we are also inviting a lot of Central Asian players in the country for the purpose of refineries as well. So I think we are on the right track. And as I said, and I will repeat, that it is an economic necessity for the country. It will save us a lot of money, $11 billion to be precise.
That's actually, I mean, that's a huge amount.
Yep.
And you would think that there would be also, I mean, is that an attractive investment? Do you think, I mean, even from an external investment point of view, the economics of that, is that something, to get FID on such things?
Absolutely, it is. And SIFC, the recently created agency that is built for the purpose of to bring more FID in the country, foreign direct investment, FDI in the country.
Okay. Vibhuti, we've got a couple of minutes till we wrap up. I just wanted to look at that sort of panel survey result. I mean, reduce imported fuels. I'm not surprised with that 0%, actually. I don't know if anyone is considering that option. Obviously, that can happen once you resolve the other three. I would like to go back to the sort of storage capacity question with you, and I mean, not so much the renewable storage, but other sort of fuel storage in India. I mean, there's a lot of talk today about how much storage China has, and it's importing a lot of crude for energy security and storing it rather than using it. But say India on that front, from a sort of geopolitical perspective, does it have the capacity to import as much crude as it wants today, or are there limitations on that in terms of the cycle of how it processes that internally?
You're right. I think India does have big refining capacity, but as far as the storage is concerned, I think there are limitations because there's huge infrastructure development that would be required. I think India has been more focusing on building LNG terminals for import of oil and gas rather than on the storage. So I think increasingly there might need to be a different focus, but what I feel is renewables is outpowering in terms of economics. So India might not be investing in building more and more
Okay.
storage rather than renewables and renewable energy storage.
Vibhuti, Garg, Osama, Rizvi, and Ram Narayanan, thank you so much for joining us on this panel. I'm afraid we very quickly run out of time. Great to have you, and do tune in for the remainder of the forum today as we make our way around the world.